Good evening and a blessed Easter to all of you. As we got more snow this week, I wondered whether spring was ever going to come. And I have perhaps a bit of a confession to make because it's really all my fault. You see, when I was in seminary, I flunked the Weather Miracles course. And so the weather's all messed up. You got a defective bishop, the rookie's defective, and spring still hasn't come. There's that rhythm, though, in our life when we might seem to be in things that seem to be a very long and a very, very bitter winter. And we might wonder if spring will come at all. It seems that we all go through some tough experiences of one sort or another in our life. And it seems to me that it probably happens to everybody at least once, where it seems like our whole life just falls apart. Now, it's already happened to me several times. And whatever it is that that we may face, there are times in our life that seem like a very, very long and a very bitter winter. And when will the suffering come to an end? Jesus is risen from the dead. Suffering and death do not have the last word. We are followers of Jesus, so we believe in the death and resurrection of Christ. And somehow when it plays itself out in our own life, it's a little bit harder for us to believe. But now, because of Jesus, suffering no longer has to be empty or meaningless. Because of Jesus, suffering no longer has to be without purpose. Because of Jesus and his resurrection, suffering can bring us and many others as well to new life. And let me explain a little bit more what I'm talking about here. I knew a woman who died from Alzheimer's disease. And she had a large family, I think 9 children, I think. And a number of her children really abandoned the practice of their faith. And some of them did some things that I'm sure caused her some very bitter worry. When the disease was just in its beginning stages, she said that she would accept this for the sake of her children. She suffered with Alzheimer's for a good number of years and then passed. And I can't help but think heaven, she might see her children because her suffering helped to get them there. You see, in Jesus, suffering no longer has to be empty and meaningless. Suffering no longer has to be without purpose, because in suffering, in Jesus, suffering has the meaning of love. Because on his death on the cross, we see the greatest expression of love that the world has ever known. And Jesus took what is so horrible to us and what is without purpose, and he gave it purpose and meaning. In Jesus, suffering is linked with love and brings us salvation and redemption. And he invites us as his followers to pick up our cross each day and follow him, because he invites us to unite our sufferings with his, and so share in his work of redemption. As St. Paul says, I willingly make up in my own body what is lacking in the sufferings of Christ, for the sake of his body, the church. Now, this doesn't mean in any way that the work of Jesus is incomplete or insufficient in itself. But rather, he so honors and respects our freedom that he invites us to share in his saving work by uniting our sufferings with his. And so then, for us, because of the death and resurrection of Jesus, our suffering no longer has to be without meaning, no longer has to be without purpose. It too, united with Christ, can take on the meaning of love. And that, I believe, is what we see in this life of the woman that I talked about. She so loved her children that she was willing to embrace the sufferings of Alzheimer's for their sake. Winter does come to an end. In the light of Jesus risen from the dead, a whole new light is shone on the winters of our life. And they're given new meaning, new purpose, new life. So let us rejoice in the resurrection of Jesus. Because suffering and death no longer has the last word. Jesus does. His resurrection does. His salvation does. He has come to give us life.